Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we are talking about the modern world of work, how it has changed in recent years, and how AP automation is adapting to meet the needs of both workers and managers. I'm joined by Mary Miller and Sean Fitzgerald of KwikTag by enChoice today. KwikTag is the sponsor of this episode, and we begin the discussion by looking at some recent analyst findings on attitudes toward remote work and how that translates to Mary and Sean's experiences working with companies to embrace the digital world. They share some customer stories, explain why the profile of a company adopting AP automation is changing, and they talk about AP technology in the context of evolving expectations for outcomes with business solutions. All right, well, I am here with Mary Miller and Sean Fitzgerald. Hello to both of you.
Hello, Jason. Thanks for having us.
Hey, Jason, how are you?
Great. Why don't we start with a bit of an introduction? Our podcast listeners might recognize you, Mary, but why don't you go first? Tell us a little bit more about who you are and KwikTag.
Absolutely, Jason. My name is Mary Miller, and I head up the marketing program here at KwikTag. We're the software division of enChoice, and our specialty, our focus, if you will, is automating AP and payments, specifically within the dynamic space.
Great. And hey, Sean, welcome.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me. My first time here. Yeah, I'm a 12-year KwikTag veteran, and I am an account executive. So I get the fun and the privilege of talking with people who are thinking about adding KwikTag, and I get to work as a consultant with them. And it's been a pleasure doing that for these last 12 years, and I'm excited about what's to come.
All right, excellent. Well, first, I think actually, Mary, I wanted to give you credit because you brought a great idea for the discussion today, looking at some recent research on remote work. I guess it actually used to be called sort of telework, but yeah, remote work. I think everyone's familiar with the concept at this point, but some interesting survey findings and things that I think kind of align with common sense in some ways, but also some surprises. You found a couple of interesting stats and findings about productivity and remote work, and I know that's really close to your heart and to what KwikTag really focuses on. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the findings that jumped out at you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jason. The whole idea here is that, like you say, remote work or work from home or telework, whatever, in years past, right, used to almost be, a little bit taboo, right? Oh gosh, no, we can't have people working from home. My gosh, they're not going to get anything done. And certainly what we think of traditionally as back office operational teams, right? Their job is to keep the lights on and make sure that everybody has what they need in the office environment to do their job. And then COVID happened, right? And it became a norm and a necessity. And all of a sudden, this thing that used to be almost feared by many organizations and their leadership now became something that we had to not only adopt but embrace. And so, with every crisis scenario, there comes good and bad, right? Obviously, there were a lot of things that a lot of us would like to move past a lot more quickly from the pandemic and move forward with the real life and new normal and whatever that means, right? But remote work seemed to be one of those things that people said, hey, maybe our perception of this for all these years wasn't quite right, because the studies that we found in recent months actually have kind of taken a look back at the last couple of years compared to people who drove into the office every day and, sat with, their feet under the desk kind of a thing and talked on the phone and worked on the computer and then drove home every day. Compared to that, what these research studies have found is that people on average are about 47% more productive. And some of these research studies were done by McKinsey and others in the marketplace that are really focused on helping organizations optimize their team productivity and their work-life balance and the hours that they spent, even Jason, every day working, finding that it actually expanded their workday, maybe broke it up into a few different ways, but expanded their workday and expanded their productivity, even for those that were responsible for things like, the AP functions and other back office operations, because they were able to add a little bit more flexibility. And as a result, they found that they were more productive and actually performing better because they were able to get that balance. And it actually increased employee retention as well, which is one of the surprising findings that we saw, as a result of this study. So it's a really sort of interesting dynamic to look at how this sort of crisis created a little bit of real benefit in work-life balance and for people that are now working from home.
There's so many, there's at least a few elements anyway that are sort of all wrapped up together in this conversation. So I'm really looking forward to sort of, taking them apart a bit and taking each one in the consideration. So for example, retaining employees, hugely important, but productivity is also, something where, especially when it comes to a role, I would think like an AP clerk or an AP department that has, where, throughput and sort of processing is so important at the high level that I can't help but think that sort of technology improvements as well as people's sort of work conditions or work satisfaction kind of go hand in hand.
Right. And one of the things I'll invite Sean to share his experience and input on this too. But one of the things that we're seeing is, AP. Again, I'll kind of think of this as encourage you to think this is before and after, right? Before COVID, it was one of those things that, this is a priority. We know we need to automate our invoice process. We know we could gain efficiencies from it. But when everybody started working from home, especially in this environment, it was no longer a matter of if, but when and how fast. And Sean, maybe you can share the example of the customer that we worked with that had been kind of, to use your phrase, kicking that can down the road for a couple of years. But then beginning of March of 2020, they called us and shared their experience. Maybe you could kind of tell a little bit about their story and what they went through to overcome that.
Yeah, you bet. As you said, Mary, they were, as I coined the term. I don't know if I coined it, but I refer to them as can kickers because, back in the day when we were meeting at conferences frequently, annually at least, they'd come by the table. If I remember the first year, and they were all excited about it, and we kind of went down through the process in the months after that, and then they didn't do anything that year. Saw them again at the next conference, and that happened a couple more times, and they really did kick that can down the road. But you're right. Yeah. Then in 2020, they gave us a call and said, okay, we have to go to this. And it kind of coincided with the move they were making, by the way, internally in the same building. And they were remodeling and moving everybody and doing, some work reorganization from a in-person perspective. And they were going to move up to a floor, and the I think came from management. I think even the CFO said, we're not going to have any printers up here. Okay, everybody. When I say we're going paperless, we're really going paperless. We're going to move accounting and AP and everybody up to this one area, and there's going to be no printers, no filing cabinets. We're going to be paperless and super efficient. That was the plan to begin with. And then COVID happened. So that definitely, had them decide that this is certainly the time we have to do this now. And that was a great success story because it was a sore spot for them in their company. AP was it just was tough for them. They were challenged for many different reasons, and oftentimes behind a little bit in the processing. And kind of other people around the organization knew about it, but they turned it around. They really did, and we had put in AP automation with us, put in document management. They did get rid of they don't have any printers. They did get rid of the filing cabinets. And the neatest thing for me is that the year after that, they were actually given an award for improvement, like one of the most improved departments in the organization. And, not to get too corny about it, but I mean, that's why I love doing this, right? I love bringing, just help people improve the work life side of things.
So Sean, that's a great example because one of the other things that we see is that, this team that was really struggling even in the office, right, with, challenges over getting control over GL codes and gaining visibility into invoices and making sure that approvals happened in the right order. And, God forbid, getting through audits even. It was a very difficult, a very challenging task for them. So they knew the benefits of automation. But then when they also had everybody go home and work in this new remote work world that we all now live in, it gave them also flexibility to say, hey, we can now be proactive. We can do things like better financial analysis, better reporting. We have more visibility. So it increased the flexibility in their role and work-life balance, and really actually helped retain some of those employees, in addition to, creating this whole automated process now, because it's like we expect that whole, everything is synonymous. Modern tech, high tech now just sort of has the expectation of automation, has the expectation of AI being built into this process. Make my work life better, make it more efficient, and give me that flexibility of work life balance, because in many cases I'm working remotely in this environment.
So for me, the story sort of lines up as, the technology sort of enabled them to take the step in how what they can give to their employees. I mean, without the technology, without paperless, a company like that can't let their business leave the office, can't let their workers leave the office. I mean, I think in a crisis like a pandemic, yes, you have to, but then we've heard stories. I think, Mary, you even shared stories in the past of sort of the scramble the companies went through back in spring of 2020 to move paper around if they couldn't digitize fast enough, and the real headaches and risks of, checks that had to be signed and moved around and so forth. I mean, without those things, work from home is almost impossible, or it's a very painful process.
Right, right. And the example that Sean was just sharing as well, they were live within what, Sean, 4, maybe 5 weeks, because they realized just how quickly this became an issue, that in order to continue to do their jobs, it was something that they just had to get done very quickly. And so I want to say they were live within, at the most, 5 weeks. I think it was actually closer to 4, though. You probably know better, Sean.
Yeah, it was a really rapid implementation, for sure. And yeah, and they realized the benefits. But you guys were talking about the expectation, Mary. You mentioned, and I think we see that too. I call it. This might be a dated term at this point, but I used to call it the app attitude. And that idea that in our in our personal lives, right? If when it comes to technology and our phones and all that, you look for something. Oh, there's probably an app for that, and you search real quick. You find the app you need, and you find the widget, the whatever it is, and it makes your life, a little bit or a lot of it easier at that point, right? And then you come to work, and everything kind of slows down, right? And where's the automation? And how come this isn't easier? And people don't want to hear about 6-month implementation projects anymore and everything. Why does it take so long? And then definitely, certainly with with the not to date myself or anything, but with the younger generation coming along, right? I mean, they especially, of course, expect it to not be this difficult and this manual, and I think even all of us really at this point are. So, yeah, to have to come in and spend your time doing manual tasks and keying in things on the keyboard when there's a better way and there's technology and a machine that can do it for you. Um, that does change things. And I've talked to people who start wondering about, the companies that don't have that. How come in fact, I just literally, we have a client right now who, KwikTag, not to go into KwikTag commercial, but, we have a document management system and we do AP automation. Most of our companies use us for both, but some just start with document management. So I'm talking to a client right now who's doing just that. And they don't use our AP automation solution. And literally they have one AP person, and she quit essentially on them. This just happened a couple months ago. And they were able to talk her back into staying. And they really valued her. She's great. They wanted to keep her. If they promised to automate. I'm not kidding. That sounds like I made that up. But I literally heard the story about 2 weeks ago. They told me that. And I'm like, fantastic. Let's do that. Let's help make her life better. Let's make her work life better. So, yeah, those stories are out there. People, like I said, people expect the technology.
And that supports some of the study findings that we sort of started this conversation with. I mean, people are much more likely to start looking for another job if remote work or automated capabilities, not automated capabilities to be taken away, but if remote work is taken away, or if they don't have access to that. I mean, without automation and good applications, like you're saying, Sean, it's just not even a starting point for the conversation. So, and the I guess the other point I want to raise about that, and maybe back to even the first customer you were talking about, is sort of the the divide between maybe SMBs and enterprise when it comes to attitudes toward remote work and maybe attitudes toward automation of something like AP. I don't know if you have any observations, either of you, on that divide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll start. I'm sure Sean's got examples on it too. Just kind of from a high level perspective, one of the things that we have seen is that historically it used to be, we work with a lot of Dynamics customers, a lot of companies that use Microsoft Dynamics ERP systems, and the perception, the history used to be, oh, that's mid market or enterprise, and while we certainly have a lot of customers who are in that space, larger growing organizations, what people would traditionally maybe think of as mid-market, kind of coming out of the SMB sort of phase, that, like, okay, that kind of automation stuff, all those fancy AI that you're talking about, that's great. That's mid-market, that's enterprise. That's not for me. If I'm a small business, if I'm less than 100 employees, or if I'm a growing organization, maybe I'm a startup that's looking to scale, like that's not for me. I can't afford it, or it's going to be priced way out of my range, or like Sean said, it's going to take too long to implement. Like I'm in growth mode. I don't have time for that. And what we've seen, the reality is that with things like AI, they can actually, as you build them into the product and build them into the process, not only does it make the product itself more affordable because there isn't a separate, third party application that you have to connect to, and weeks and months that you have to spend training such an outside system, and then integrating it with, that becomes very complex. So what we're seeing now is that as we build in these new higher technology, more modern interfaces and steps in the process of automation, it actually brings the cost down and it makes it more scalable. We're actually on a mission kind of right now to say, listen, AP automation is affordable for everyone. And to Sean's point, I'm not going to go into a commercial about that, but I do want to emphasize that things like AI being built into products really gives the opportunity for smaller organizations or those that are looking to grow very quickly. Solutions like this can actually scale with you and bring to life the idea that, some companies have to face, do I hire, especially those maybe smaller organizations, do I hire somebody to do this, or do I automate this process? Because in many cases over the years, it's been a decision, right? Because they didn't think they could afford to do both. And what we're seeing is that oftentimes once you start automating, now you can hire a more skilled resource because they are going to have the ability to have the process automated. Again, we'll speak specifically about invoices and payments in this context. Automate that part of the process so that as you hire, you can hire maybe a business analyst, a financial analyst, somebody that's an AP manager that can kind of monitor the invoice process, but then also work with other areas of finance to gain more visibility, gain more insight from that. And then again, add back in that remote work element of it, because research suggests that when people are given an opportunity to work remotely for all of the reasons that we talked about before, efficiency, work-life balance, better time management, increased productivity, 87% of people will take advantage of that opportunity. So the majority of the workforce right now wants to have that balance. But if you give them, hey, we've got the tools, we've got the automation, and we want you to join our organization, or if you're already an employee, we want to make this a better experience for you, help us understand how we can do that with all of the balance of AI and all of these new technologies. So small businesses can't afford it now, Jason, is the moral of the story. But I think it's important to know that mid-market and growing organizations can just as easily add it into their process without it being a 4-month, a 6-month, a 9-month, 12 or 18-month implementation project as well. And Sean, I think, again, you have a great example with a customer who just had one AP person who was definitely doing more than their share, and initially didn't think that they could afford AP automation in their scenario as well.
Yeah, you're talking about the dad,
Yeah.
my good buddy. Yeah, I love that story too. So they came to us. This was a great story, and this came up while they were looking at KwikTag, and turned out they had one, as she said, one AP guy handling this, and this was right in the middle of COVID, so he was definitely working from home, and that wasn't so much the issue in this story, but he was a single dad. and had his kids. He was a primary caregiver for his kids. He had 3 kids living with him, and a couple boys that had, kind of a little bit older and kind of a little more independent on their own. But he had a daughter, and I want to say like a seventh, eighth grader, and she was a competitive athlete. And they spent, if you ever had a kid who was a competitive athlete, you know what your weekends can be like when you're in season, right? Going to the games or the meets or whatever it is. And they traveled a lot is the point. And so he was gone a lot. And, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, coming back late, sometimes early Monday. And then all that goes with it during the week, let alone, right? And this was a great guy. And he was really trying to be the best dad he could on his own. But he was burdened. He was overburdened. I always said about 500 invoices a month or so one person can handle if they're really good and really efficient. And he was doing 3 times that much on his own, working from home now, right, and juggling all this. And boy, it worked, man. We changed his life for sure. And again, that one really stood out to me because I've had kids I've lived that life, and so I know what that's like. So made a hero out of him. He's happy about it. And think about that's the other thing too. Think about how grateful he now is, right, to his current company for making that investment. I mean, it's an investment in the company, but you can't help in that situation to feel like that's an investment in me. I'm valued there. And, boy, we know you can't put a price on that, right? And talk about the loyalty that's built and the trust and the appreciation. So, so it's technology can do great things for people.
Right. And one thing to just kind of add to that, as I listened to you describe that story, Sean, it's one of those that kind of gives me chills, right? Because you're like, it literally did change his life and bring a balance that he didn't have before. And in addition to that investment that they're now making in that employee as well as the whole company, it's also giving that company more of a competitive edge, right? They can use, the resources that they have to gain in other areas of efficiency, gain visibility that they didn't have, all by automating their invoice process, because now they can do that work from anywhere. They don't even have to be in their home office, right? He can be at his kid's game and review and approve invoices and make sure that everything looks good, press submit to approve something, and it's done, right? We don't have to be anymore in our office, whether that's home or a physical office, or at an airport or a Starbucks, whatever. It doesn't matter. We can literally have access to anywhere, which is not just an advantage and a symptom, if you will, or a benefit of having things automated, but also having things hosted in the cloud comes into play there, right? Where you can literally do your work from anywhere, and whether it's hosted in the cloud for their ERP system, doesn't matter. They can have tools like AP automation hosted or accessible even, through other technology infrastructure access. The whole idea is that as long as you can work from anywhere, you're giving that employee the feeling of I have flexibility. And as a result, you're going to make your company more competitive in the market, because those people are going to want to do a better job. They're going to be happier. They're going to want to stay, and they're going to want to influence what your company does moving forward, so that they're not just kind of punching a clock anymore. We've kind of removed that discussion, that point from our discussion as we think about hiring and training and onboarding employees. It's how can we make your life better, because we want you to stay, we want you to be committed, we want you to help us become a better company as a result of all that.
I'm ready. I want to do it.
Let's go, right? Sign me up.
But I had one other scenario in mind, and that was very relevant, I think, to some of our listeners, and certainly to the space that we're in when it comes to ERP moving to the cloud. I know we've talked about some of the themes related to that as it relates to AP, but can you talk a little more specifically about where something like AP automation fits in the context of a company that's looking to move from on-prem systems and perhaps without invoice processing or invoice automation to ERP in the cloud? Probably in this context, probably talking about Business Central or perhaps F&O, and adding invoice automation in that context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll give you an example. Actually, we talk to companies all the time that really are trying to figure out, how long do I stay, right? We've got a lot of GP customers, as I know a lot of those in the GP space, and a lot of our Dynamics partners have a lot of GP customers, and we're very, very loyal, very committed to that space. At the same time, however, we're also preparing for cloud native systems such as Business Central and others that'll be on the roadmap down the line. But let's talk for a second about our GP customers, because the first thing we want them to know is if you want to stay on GP forever, we support that. We invest very significantly still in our GP solutions, and we make them available in the cloud or on premises if that's where companies want to stay. But what we're seeing most of all, Jason, is that there's a hybrid. Companies who today have, let's just say, Dynamics GP on premises can still have our AP automation solution hosted in the cloud. So they can have kind of the best of both worlds. Now, the other thing is, cloud doesn't mean that you have to move to a different ERP system. If your organization is looking to move to a different ERP system, let's just again say Business Central as an example, because it's kind of the mid-market equivalent from the Microsoft Dynamics stack that's available cloud native, out of the box. It doesn't have to mean that. You can have your GP system hosted in the cloud. You can add things like Power GP Online, that's a hosted solution for GP. So companies that are on Dynamics GP, I think first and foremost need to understand that there are still a lot of solutions that are going to be available for them, and they can be hosted in the cloud even if their system is on premises. Now, switching gears to those organizations that are looking either to move to Business Central, say from GP or elsewhere, or that are coming in new into Business Central, there is a different mindset, to your point, Jason, of this, out of the box, cloud first, digital first, as Sean mentioned, sort of the younger generation coming in, so to speak. And I can say that because I have kids that are in that, entering the workforce right now at that stage in life. I understand what they're looking for. They have had a phone in their hand since, they were born practically, and they've grown up with the app experience. They come into the market in the accounting and finance industry, and they expect the ERP system to be a cloud first. They expect everything to be at their fingertips, regardless of where they are. And so, as we look now to build solutions, AP automation in particular, for that cloud native environment, again, using Business Central as an example, we see that people want, instant access. And we actually have a customer who it actually fits this profile really well. They used to be a GP customer, and a few years ago, they made the decision to move to Business Central for a lot of reasons. One, they are a technology provider themselves in the healthcare space, actually, and they said, hey, we're moving toward cloud first. We want to be cutting edge. We want to be able to show that we're, taking the next step in our digital transformation. So they made the decision to move to Business Central. Well, at the same time, they'd been using our AP automation with GP for a number of years, and they said, hey, this is great. Can we, flip the switch and move this to Business Central? And we said, yes, but the product is still in development yet. So, give us a little time. And they said, okay, well, we can't wait. In the meantime, we need to go find something, right? And so they went down a path of trying to make that transition as they moved to Business Central. But Sean, maybe you could share a little bit about their experience, their journey, if you will, before they started with Simply AP in sort of in recent times. But they
Yeah.
went down quite a path before
They
they got there,
did, yeah. Once I had to send them away,
which is
unfortunately,
hard to do.
which is hard to do, and they didn't want to leave either because they loved their QuikTag system. But yeah, unfortunately, they had to go through a few. I think it ended up being 4 was the number, different starts and stops with some different vendors, and things didn't work out for different reasons. And but that, what was the time frame there, Mary? About 18 months over that time or so? Was it almost 2 years? Yeah, yeah. And finally, by then we were ready. That was the exciting part. They called us back at one point and said, are you guys close yet? Because this last one isn't going well either. And we were, and they came on board, and it was exciting because they had a different experience with us, fortunately. And we were up and running within, literally the implementation was done in one day with the CFO. Who did it. He was a real hands-on guy, and he was one who coined the term with us that so easy even a CFO could do it. But it was a really simple implementation process. We turned it on that same day. They started. They're like, "Can we process invoices?" And we're like, "Yeah, do it." And they did one, and they kind of, and they looked up and like, it worked, and the next one worked, and they all worked, and they just, and they couldn't believe it. So. So but again, QuikTag, as Mary keeps saying, it's a native cloud solution. So it wasn't anything we tried to retrofit from back in the day into the cloud. So, and that's a big deal too, having a
Right.
native cloud solution. So,
Well, because I think the other expectation there is that it's going to be quick. It's going to be easy to get up and running with. It's going to be easy to connect to my Business Central environment. And so the example, Sean, that you're talking about, of course, is Simply AP, which is our latest member, or newest edition of the newest member of the QuikTag product family. And it's our AP automation solution for Business Central, and it is cloud first. It is cloud native. But just like those companies that come into the cloud mindset with their ERP system, they had those same expectations, right, with their AP automation solution. And so what you just described is again, the perfect story, right? They were up and running literally within a few hours. But that's the expectation of organizations. I want to be able to essentially push a button and make it happen. And that's what happens now with AP automation solutions such as Simply AP, our solution for Business Central that automates the invoice process. And like you're describing, Sean, that straight through process, even because now they can, those teams can do even more proactive financial analysis, more proactive reporting, and gain insights into their data, into their process. Imagine AP being at the forefront of that budget and planning conversation, instead of the last group that gets asked, well, what did we spend? Hold on, let me go run a bunch of reports. If you can be proactive about that, to say, because I have this data and this visibility, and I know that my invoices are automatically going through the process and creating into Business Central, I can now spend my time saying, hey, here's what we're spending with this vendor. Could we be getting a better rate with them? Could we be taking advantage of early pay discounts? Could we be looking at more wholesale type pricing structures because we have a better relationship and we now know how much we're paying to vendor A, vendor B, vendor C over a period of time, that really can make us more efficient. So there's all of these different aspects that come into a cloud solution that that works with native ERPs that were born in the cloud, so to speak, that really give companies, again, that competitive edge, that feeling of employee enablement and employee support with things that are available at their fingertips like they really have never been before. And it also, in addition to keeping them productive and increasing their productivity, it makes them continue, through business continuity, so that should something else in the market or the industry change in the future, they're ready for it now. They're prepared because they had to go through this automation process for whatever reason, whether it was work from home or because the company had a cloud first initiative, or whatever what drove them to automation is now going to be a part of their daily life and their daily expectation. And the thing that I'll just kind of throw in there from an adoption standpoint, one of the things that makes all of those stories so great, but especially that one, Sean, is that usage-based pricing, which is something that we support and offer to our customers using both our AP automation solutions for GP or Business Central, is that it really makes the solution affordable for anybody because it scales and it's really, will meet them where they are, whether on premises or in the cloud, no matter what size invoices, what number of invoices or size of the team, because all of those things sort of, come as part of the package. But the whole goal of, you don't have to make any sacrifices on cost or time, and you can move to the cloud very quickly and get started very quickly, really just helps tell the story of companies can automate their invoice process regardless of whether they're working from home, in the office, on-prem, in the cloud, and really see success very, very quickly.
Yeah, I know I threw out the 500 number, 500 invoices a month, and we were talking about SMB or enterprise and all that. That 500 number always kind of seemed to be the number for, just kind of my back of the napkin analysis with my experience over the years. 400 or 500 invoices a month, and one person would be like, we got to do something, hire somebody or automate, right? And so, but I've definitely seen that number come down, and post COVID, and I hate to keep saying that, but it's, again, people just realized we have to have this no matter what, and then even after that's kind of worn off, the post COVID hangover is worn off a little bit. Now it's almost just like an expectation. It's the knowledge of that you realize there is better technology out there. Why are we still doing it this way? Meaning, why are we still doing it manually? Why are we passing paper around? Why am I printing out emails and walking them down the hall to somebody to get a signature? Like, we just know that, okay, enough is enough. We need to put technology out in front of this. Even if we can do it manually, we know we shouldn't be doing it manually.
Yeah, this has been really interesting to hear your input, and it just draws me back to some of the findings that we started with. I mean, 29% of workers have changed jobs in the past year. 66% who have remote work would start looking for a new job if it was taken away. And then you put yourself in the position of someone looking to hire someone for an AP team and not being able to offer them perhaps what they would kind of think are table stakes at this point, which is, digital systems, automation, paperless, flexibility in where you're working. It's a little hard to. It would be a bit of a concern, I guess. I would think if I was hiring in a firm that couldn't compete on some of those factors. Well, thank you so much to both of you for joining. Really great to hear the perspective, especially to hear some customer stories. That's always really interesting to me, and I think to our listeners as well. Anything else you wanted to add before we started to wrap up?
I would just say, Jason, I think one of the things that you just said is really, really key right now. I think especially as people look forward into what their financial landscape, what the market landscape, what the competitive landscape, could look like over the next few years. It's been difficult to hire, in general, right? Like people coming out of, do I want to stay working from home? Do I want to work for myself? Do I want to go back to work for an organization? It's been really challenging to hire really good talent, especially in expertise areas that involve, let's just say, Business Central, for example. We hear this from partners and customers alike, and many of us can relate to that. It's challenging to hire, and so if you are able to find somebody that meets your skill requirements and has the experience and expertise that you need, the last thing you want to do is limit the geography, right? If they don't, well, gosh, it used to be if they didn't live down the street, couldn't get to the office within an hour, then that move on to the next, right? Well, now that person might be across the country or in another country for that matter. And it's okay as long as they have access to be able to do their job, right? Because hiring is a challenge. And so if there's a competition already for talent, you're going to have to maybe broaden the doors, the visibility of where you'll hire from, but also you have to be able to make that remote work experience seamless and easy for people to use, easy for people to train, easy for your team to adopt. And when you can find somebody with the right skills, you want to get them no matter where they are. And so being able to support that remote work in all of your applications, front office, back office, including paying the bills, as it were in our case, you have to take advantage of that. And automation is going to be key to that success, regardless of where you hire.
Very good. Perhaps we should end it there. Sean, Mary, thank you both so much for joining me.
Thanks, Jason. It's a pleasure to participate. We're always grateful to share our experience as well as those of our customers with you. Sean, any closing thoughts?
No, that's it. Thank you, Jason. I agree with you. The more I talk about this, the more kind of excited I get. And so we appreciate your time to allow us to share the story of KwikTag with everyone.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to Mary and Sean for joining us. And now a message from KwikTag. This episode is sponsored by KwikTag by enChoice. To learn more about KwikTag and the benefits of intelligent cloud AP automation, visit KwikTag.com. That's KwikTag.com. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Please do follow us on LinkedIn or on Twitter for all of our updates. And until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.